Okay, I think we're recording. Yeah, looks good. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to the third and final webinar that takes place prior to the week of Boise State. This one is on the issues of logistics and liability. This is basically a discussion of all the things that happen in the week that are not actually part of the core political process, really. Things like recreation and how meals work and the like. And also importantly, covering issues of liability, some general logistics for how we get in and out of general assemblies, and what to do if there's a medical issue and how to deal with the press and the like. So this is kind of a catch-all category, but it's meant to go right at the very end, right before the week starts, so very close to the start of the week, so it's nice and fresh on your mind. We'll, of course, be touching on this again once we get to the week of Boise State and our staff orientation at the beginning of the week, but it's good to get it under your belt now and prove that you've mastered this content with a brief quiz that'll follow in the day or two following this presentation. Also, we'll send it out along with the recording. So if you get cut off or need to duck out or you're having audio issues, you can find this on YouTube a bit later. All right, let's get started, everyone. I'm Darren Brabham. I'm a counselor with Boise State. I've been with Boise State 1999 was my year as a delegate to Boise State, and I've been back every year as a counselor since, except for the year my son was born in 2014. Kind of surprised us last minute right before the week, so that wasn't super fair to do that. So I missed that week. Other than that, though, this has been a great program and pretty near and dear to my heart. So this is my, I believe, 19th Boise State coming up, so I'm excited to share the week with all of you. For those of you who are new to staff, who served as statesmen last year, most likely, welcome. This is a really interesting fraternity of counselors that goes way back, lots of deep friendships and so on. And I think you're going to enjoy your time with us, and I hope you make the most of it. It's a pretty steep learning curve for the week. It took me a couple of years to really get down the political process, if I'm honest. And so don't be afraid to admit that you don't know 100% of what's going on. But in terms of safety and liability, you do need to know 100%, and you shouldn't be shy about reaching out for help. So that's really the point of this one, and we'll dive into it. Here's our general overview. We're going to probably keep this to the briefest of the three, I hope. Feel free to ask questions with the question pane. I may or may not have time to get to those as I'm speaking, but I'll keep an eye on that for you. In this one, we're talking about kind of what I like to call the oddball issues, the things that don't really fit in the political structure that Patrick went over, and it's a bit broader and higher level than some of the issues of organization and dealing with conflict and how to run a tight ship with a city and so on that Mike Harper did with his second webinar. So what we're going to include in this one, for instance, is all the different programs and operations that happen within Boise State, like recreation time is a big one, all the various committee meetings and moving parts that are happening in what feels like kind of a generally chaotic and scattered part of the day, but is probably the most fun. Also talk about flag ceremonies, visiting dignitaries and speakers at general assemblies, a brief word about how meals work at Boise State, how voting is going to happen. We'll talk about the college fair briefly, our parade and Capitol visit, which is always memorable, and issues of liability and wellness and general conduct and media relations at the end. So let's get to it. All right. So recreation time, this is kind of where a lot of the statesmen make some of their deepest memories is bonding with their city throughout the week. As a brief overview, just to let you know, we'll have no rec time on Sunday, which is the day they check in. That's pretty typical. And we're also not going to have recreation time on Thursday because we have a jam-packed day on Thursday with political programming and also a pretty full General Assembly and a talent show. So there'll be no rec time on Sunday or Thursday, but every other day of the week, including Friday, we're going to be having recreation time, including the sports brackets. So all the recreation time happens in the evening. So after dinner, everybody changes into the recreation outfits, which we'll talk about in a second. And then on Friday, they'll start the morning off that way before they head off to their homes with their parents. The dress code for Boise State, as you've probably already been over and you're pretty familiar with it, is the Boise State t-shirt tucked in with long pants, jeans, slacks, closed-toed shoes, and wearing the name badge. This is the standard Boise State uniform, and for recreation time, we differ just slightly. Everyone wears their Boy State shirt, but they're free to wear shorts. They're free to wear flip-flops, although we require closed-toed shoes if they participate in any sports. But they're free to be a lot more casual. They can wear hats. They can kind of have a backpack with an item or two with it. They can carry around water bottles and the like. But we do want them to have their Boy State shirt on at the very least and have their name tag with them at all times. This is a general safety issue to make sure that we know which of the students are with the program and which ones are not. We need to keep a visual tally of who's where and whether they're part of our program or not, just for general safety. So this is going to be mandatory. We're going to be in Boy State shirts the whole week. For those of you who are with the city, I would advise that you give some handy advice to them early in the week about maybe, I've heard different theories on this. The shirt that they're going to go get sweaty in at rec time, I mean, they're sweaty all week, but the shirt they're going to really get sweaty in at rec time, I've heard one philosophy where they might have one shirt dedicated as the rec time shirt, which is pretty brutal, but it works. Or they wear the shirt from the day before and kind of a second wearing. They'll wear it at sports to get it sweaty. Hopefully they're not wearing the one that they wear to sports and then wearing it the rest of the day after, but hey, everyone's got different standards. So just advise them that that's what the general flow is going to be in case, so people can plan their laundry and so on accordingly. But that's our uniform for rec time. For sports, make sure they have closed-toed shoes. We're going to encourage sunscreen and drinking lots of water, so tell people they can bring those with them. They can wear sunglasses at rec time and so on. It's really just the shirt and the badge that stay the same. We have a similar standard of excellence throughout the whole program, and that includes the uniform, so that's why we keep it. For rec time, we come and go to different activities. More or less, we're trying to do this in unison. It gets a little scattered because everybody's going in different places. But we're going to make sure that there are counselors along the way to kind of shepherd large groups to and from activities, and make sure that we've got all our spaces covered, that we're participating in activities with dodgeball, basketball, 7-on-7 flag football. Those are our sports this year. If people need to go to band rehearsal, the band generally has a pretty good flow about where they need to go and meet and how often they're meeting. They kind of run themselves in a way through the band director. So it's organized chaos, but it is organized. And so when you get your assignment during rec time, and everyone will have an assignment during rec time on the staff, you need to show up and run that activity and make sure that statesmen know where they need to go. So it's good to have a crib sheet of the general flow of where everyone's meeting in case people pull you aside and know they want to ask you directions about where is so-and-so meeting. So be prepared to be a good guide and a steward of safety and so on during the rec time. Encourage participation. So early in the week, some of the teams at some point might get eliminated in the brackets of sports. They might be kind of shut out and feel sad about that and so on. But they actually have a number of opportunities to participate in other activities throughout the week. And so your goal is to try to make sure they know that there's a plethora of activities they can participate in. We encourage and allow them to do football one day and then go do band the next day and then go do a campaign committee meeting the next day. They can come and go from things, every hour, every half hour if they want. They're free to move between the activities, but the goal is just to make sure that they're actually doing the activities. We're not going to allow people to just kind of lounge around and go to sleep. We're definitely not going to let them wander around, outside the boundaries of where the camp is meeting, which means if there's not an activity there, they shouldn't be there at any part of the campus. And they're not going to be back in their dorm sleeping, of course, because we lock up the floors en masse and everybody leaves together. So be with your statesman the whole time, not necessarily with your city. You're going to be assigned to something else and running some activity, and your city will be running around. The best way to do this during rec time, I've found, especially with the Olympiad, is when they elect their Olympiad director the very first night, Sunday night, when they barely know each other, emphasize, if you can, that this doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest athlete in the group. And in many cases at major college sports programs, the athletic director is not necessarily a big-time athlete. They're an administrator. They make sure that all the teams are fielded, that there's no forfeits. They make sure people know where to be and how to get there on time. They're responsible for general morale. They're making sure that there's some fair play and people can rotate in and out of the games. So the Olympiad director can be leaned on to help you organize during rec time, make sure they're running a tight ship on their own with their group. But emphasize participation. In addition to sports, we have, in the Olympiad bracket, we have band rehearsals going on. The band will know who they are. Some of them come with their instruments, some of them don't. We do have instruments to loan out. They'll be meeting in the band rehearsal hall, and we'll tell you where that is when you get there. We also have a series of seminars that'll be going on, I believe, most of the days, if not all the recreation days. These are more or less college seminars. This is how a college classroom would work, and they're going to be on different topics such as media and the political environment, and I believe we're working on a lobbying discussion, and so on. So if they want a deeper dive into how some of these activities work and they want to get the feel for what a college seminar lecture feels like, they can go to the seminars. They can come and go from these, although they'll probably want to stick around for the whole one when they get there. Those run about an hour each. Talent show tryouts will begin on Tuesday, and they'll happen every day until the talent show on Thursday night. We'll announce where those are as well, but anyone who's got any talent, and we use that term fairly loosely, although it's a pretty talented group, so it's hard to make the cut, but anyone who's got talent, they can tell a joke, they can play an instrument, and so on, encourage them to go to talent show tryouts. It's a flexible schedule down there, and they'll find a way to fit them in so they can go to their other activities. We have 3 different political committees that meet during rec time every day of rec. So they meet generally in the following order. The bulk of the rules committee, and these are political, so the nationalists have their own rules committee and the federalists have their own. They meet together during rec time, and then they break up into kind of nearby rooms and do their own work in privacy from one another. But the rules committee will meet and do the bulk of their heavy lifting early in the week. Oh, excuse me, my battery's almost dying. Because they do they set up the rules for how debate's going to happen on the floor, and so on, and basically how to set up the political machinery of their party. They're the ones that set the rules for that. And as some of you have sat through really long, boring speeches in state party conventions that went on into the night, you know how important it is to set a good rule about time limit. Don't tip them off on the importance of this sort of thing, but they'll figure it out on their own. They'll learn by doing. But the rules committee is an important place for people who like rules and order and maneuvering and so on. Middle of the week, we see the bulk of activity happening with the platform committee. The platform committee will meet to determine what will their party actually stand for. So the platform committee, they start from scratch, and they get to decide what are the issues they care about, what are the particular stances that the party is going to stand with, and they're going to form a platform with various planks or issues that they care about, and that's going to form their identity. So when we think about the Democrats and the Republicans today, for instance, they each have pretty distinct ideologies with regards to various issues: education, transportation, reproductive rights, you name it. Those sorts of ideas and how they differ from one another have been long ingrained in the history of those two parties. At Boise State, they show up and put into random assignments, and they have blank, empty canvases to fill. And so they're going to bring their own ideas to the fore and get to debate these issues among themselves and form an identity for the party. And in some years, we have two parties, the Nationalists and Federalists, that more or less look both kind of conservative and almost identical sometimes, or both kind of liberal. Sometimes we have a fairly even split. It just depends. Every year is a little different, and it's pretty exciting. And then, of course, the candidates that run may or may not actually align with their party's platform, as we see in real politics. So it's a really exciting place for people who might have a debate background or might really care passionately about political topics or niche topics within the political realm. This is a good place for people like that who want to come and debate. Later in the week, we have the campaign committee, which is the third of the committees. All these committees are meeting throughout the week, but the bulk of the activity for the campaign committee takes place midweek and later in the week. And so what they're doing is, now that the party has a platform and identity that they've voted on in the state party convention, now that they have rules that they operate and they've got their elected leaders, such as the state party chairman and whips and so on, they now need to actively campaign to get each other elected in the general ballot. So this committee is basically tasked with the full marketing strategic apparatus. So they work not only just to make signs and decorations and vote for so-and-so for the nationalists. They're actually developing strategies for going around and talking one-on-one with people, some of that grassroots, shaking hands, campaigning that's really important with politics. So these are people who might have an artistic bent if they want to make signs, but it's also people who think strategically and may want to go into political communication or public relations or marketing. It's a good group for them. All these committees are open. Each city will send forward one representative to be on each of these committees, but they're not necessarily tied to that committee the whole week. They just have to show up for the orientation and they'll probably carry the ball for most of the time. But if they want to go play football or something, they can duck out to do that. And if other people want to come in and join the party, they can, or join the activities, they can. Each of these committees develops their own leadership structure within themselves as well. So the first time they meet, the first order of business is to pick a spokesperson or a chair of that committee. So there's a rules committee chairman, a platform committee chairman, and so on. And they develop their own system for running debates and hearing ideas. So it's a pretty interesting thing. And so if somebody says there's nothing to do during rec time because their sports got eliminated or they don't play sports, they're lying to you. There's plenty to do. So encourage them to get involved and walk in on a meeting that they've not been to yet. And lastly, we have the press corps that's meeting. So the press corps is elected right off the bat in the first city meeting, along with the Olympiad director and color guard and so on, and the mayor. The press corps is basically pulled out. Those representatives are kind of removed from the program a bit because we treat them like the press. They're supposed to be, to an extent, in an independent, objective media apparatus that's supposed to cover the activities of Boise State, both the political and the social and sports activities of the week. And they'll be pulled aside and they'll be meeting with the professional media company we've contracted with, RDM. They've been with us for a few years now, and they produce great work. And they're going to work all day on the nightly newscast that sums up the activities from the day. And that'll be broadcast in the quad at night at the end of the day before everybody goes to bed. So it's a great, and they also will be blogging, writing, and doing social media throughout the week, taking photos, shooting video. So they do get to vote. They get, just as reporters in real life get to vote in elections, they'll also get to vote. But they're not actually going to be involved in running for office. They're not going to be campaigning particularly heavily. They're supposed to maintain some distance to be covering the news stories. So it's a unique opportunity. Lots of some of the best Boise statesmen that we've had come out of this program. And they pick their own leadership structure, editors-in-chief, producers, and so on. And they work closely with RDM and a couple of other counselors throughout the week to produce high-quality results. So, of course, anyone interested in or professionally interested in becoming, some piece of the media or advertising or journalism, this is a good activity for them. But again, it's open to all, and they'll be trained on how to use the very nice, expensive, professional quality equipment during the week as well. So that's kind of the bulk of what happens during rec time. It's a lot of moving pieces. And it's your challenge during the orientation to lay out what this buffet of options is and to encourage participation and explain that they're able to maneuver and go through things as they please. They can move about and do different things. We want them to be actively involved at the end of the week, having really partaken in 2 or 3 or 4 things during rec time, probably throughout the week. Flag ceremonies briefly. The color guard is elected in the first city meeting on Sunday night. 2 color guardsmen from each city. They meet quietly early in the morning on a rotation. So a couple of cities will be selected to go meet Tuesday morning, let's say, and they work with Scott Armstrong and a couple of other counselors to learn how to properly raise a flag and salute it and prepare to lower it at the end of the day. And they'll learn all the proper flag etiquette. Of course, with that, and then at the end of the day, when we retire the flag at the end of night ceremonies at the quad, this is where they get to kind of do their whole routine where they practice that morning. They're also going to be the flag lowering group that night. So a few cities, 4 or 5 cities worth of color guardsmen will have kind of a day that they wake up early, do the prep, and then do the flag lowering at the end of the day. And then all the color guardsmen from throughout the week from all the cities, they put their name in a hat and draw the names, and those are the ones that get to go and carry the flags during the parade, the 6 flags of Texas and the 2 Legion flags, Boise State flags, during the week to the parade to the Capitol. So it's an interesting opportunity for people who want to do this little extra bit throughout the week. It really doesn't consume a ton of time for them. So if somebody runs for color guard, this is their deal for the week. It doesn't necessarily mean they're the ones carrying the guidons, which are the city flags, although often they are the same person. So they do not need to be from different parties necessarily, but just 2 people from the week. We find that a lot of students that are interested in junior ROTC tend to be the ones that do this because they have this sort of training. That's all well and good. Again, it's open to everyone who wants to do it. We'll teach them. So somebody interested in doing this activity and learning the pageantry and respect for this, the flag, this is an activity for them. During flag lowering, ceremonies, we need you as counselors to model the behavior that you expect from your statesmen. This is a time to show respect to the flag in a very brief way, to kind of symbolize all that you care about for the country and for the symbols of our nation in just a minute or two. So you as counselors need to model the behavior that you're looking for: silence, standing at attention, following the rules, doing the things, and making sure that your city is following in line with that. We've seen increasingly over the years that statesmen are taking this more and more seriously and seem to get it earlier in the week. And so that's, often in part, it's really largely due to what we're doing as staff in terms of modeling that behavior better. So no cutting up, no joking around, no playing on your phones during flag. Moving on to the next one, we've got meals, the best part of the day. We have cafeteria options in the dorms. It's a pretty great setup comparatively to other Boise State programs around the country. We have a really good set of facilities at UT in terms of the dorms and the meals. We'll be in the dorms that are around the quad area, as we were the last couple of years. We used to be in Jester Dorm. We took up the entire tower, and I don't know if or when we'll ever get back there, but we're in the home of the quad now and rather like it. And we have our cafeteria set up there. You should know as counselors that the cafeteria offers options for all dietary needs. So if we have, for instance, a statesman who says, I'm starving, on a Thursday, like I'm starving, I haven't been able to eat anything in the cafeteria, that's a red flag. And they should have brought that up earlier. But if they're claiming there are no vegetarian or vegan or gluten-free or dairy-free options, they probably are not reading the signs very carefully. All the stuff is labeled, and if they have questions about what's available to them, they need to talk to you or the cafeteria staff, and they'll find options for them. But regularly on a daily basis, we've got halal, kosher, gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, the whole range options out there. So shouldn't be an issue there. Statesmen need to bust their own trays, and there's an orderly system for doing that. That'll be evident, but you need to explain that to the statesmen so that they don't leave their trash behind. The important thing to remember about meals: be courteous to the staff. Of course, they treat us well. We should treat them well. If you're a staff member, you often have meetings to attend. The senior counselors meet every morning for breakfast at a 7 o'clock meeting, and that, with rare exception. And you are frequently going to be the last to get in there to eat, and you've got 5 minutes to eat before you need to be at the next thing or to get ahead of your city. You as a staff member can cut in line, just do it carefully and respectfully, so we don't anger the waiting lines. Just say, hey, I need to get to the next thing. Would you mind if I step in front of you? And there's usually no problems with that. But don't push and shove and assume that you're just cutting in line, please. It tends to get people upset when they're about to eat. Good thing to remember about meals for those counselors who have a city is you need to plan out, find the choke points, basically. Find the last times you're going to talk to your city in a quiet, organized way. Whether that's first in the morning, you have a full brief of the day and they write down everything in their manual, or you know that you're going to get to see them at like 10 o'clock or something when you leave a meeting, and you won't see them again until dinner, let's say. You need to figure out when the time is that you're going to finally have their attention, because if you need to make announcements before they go to a meal, you got to make them before they go to a meal, including information on where they need to meet after the meal and by what time. So find a meeting spot before you go to your first meal. Say, this is our meeting spot. I want you here by the time I say, and be accountable to your buddy, because they're going to scatter during dinners and lunches and we won't find them later. And they're going to end up all over the place in the program where they don't belong, in the other parties' meetings and all sorts of things. So keep in mind that you've got to plan ahead logistically about when you're going to last see some of these statesmen, including the band, and make sure that you've got the right announcements to them about filing deadlines, about meeting spots, whatever, before they scatter, because it's difficult to keep track of them once they've gone their merry way. And meals are often, I think, where we tend to lose folks, and they get kind of, they don't get lost, but they have to come to headquarters because they don't know where their city went. And it holds up the city waiting on them when they try to count off before they leave. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're planning ahead. The next one is speakers and general assemblies. So we have a stellar group of speakers this week. We've got high-ranking military officers, folks from federal government appointed and confirmed office. We've got we've got the whole range. So we've got a really exciting slate of speakers, and I'm always hesitant to announce their names before we start in case we have any last minute changes, but I believe the speakers we've got coming are going to be pretty amazing this year. What you need to know about General Assemblies. So General Assemblies, there aren't many of those, is when the entire Boise State is in one room. This is going to be Hogg Auditorium largely. This is a rare moment in a sense because we've got everybody in one place, and it's hard to get everybody in and out of the building quickly. It might take 20, 30, 40 minutes to get people into a building and get them seated, and then another 20, 30 to exit the building. So when we have a General Assembly that starts at 6:03 p.m., it starts at 6:03 p.m. We've choreographed these assemblies down to the minute, and yes, we are going to the minute, as Craig Bryant will surely tell you. So your duty as a counselor is to make sure people get into the space where they're meeting, that they get seated quickly and orderly, and that they're ready to be attentive when the speaker comes on. Same likewise during bathroom breaks and so on, during long party meetings, you need to be responsible for getting them out and in back in time. Because if we lose, if things get screwed up in an entry or an exit, for instance, we've lost half an hour on the program. And this week runs so fast, there are actually meetings that take place in entire rooms, like county party convention, that are themselves only 30 or 45 minutes long. So it's imperative that you get them to the right place. And it's to make sure the program runs efficiently, but also it's out of fairness to the statesmen. If they don't get a full opportunity to give a speech at the meeting they're supposed to be at, or to gather the signatures they're supposed to gather, or they end up missing the beginning of a keynote speaker because your city's late to a meeting or in a General Assembly, you're robbing them of an opportunity from the program. So keep that in mind as you're going throughout the week, that your role to move logistics is deeper than just getting people there. It's about kind of making sure their experience is all exactly what we've planned and worked all year to make it. We have visiting dignitary program, which occurs during the dinner hour. This is happening only on Monday and Tuesday this year because the other days are quite busy, which we'll talk about in a minute with the Capitol trip. Monday and Tuesday we have visiting dignitaries, and what this is while our high-powered, kind of higher level or state level offices and so on, they'll join us for larger assemblies. We have state representatives, also state level office holders, Railroad Commission and so on. But a lot of state representatives and state senators and their staffs will join us for visiting dignitaries. We'll break out to where it's between 1, 2, 3, 4 cities or so. We'll meet with in a more intimate setting with a specific dignitary that's been kind of randomly assigned. The mayor that's been elected at the beginning of the week for that city will meet with the dignitary and greet them, and then kind of do a brief interview with them, introduce them to the whole crowd as we traditionally do, and then usher them to the meeting spot where the city will get to meet and ask questions in a more intimate setting with these leaders, often about how they got to where they are and various policy stances too. So the visiting dignitary program is really special. We have counselors who work year-round to try to confirm these speakers, and it's an impressive slate as always, jam-packed week with that. So the way this works is that you'll get an assignment. Probably in the moment they're going to announce certain cities. Half the cities probably will meet with their dignitary first for half an hour and then go from that to dinner, and the dignitary is welcome to join or not. The other half will go to dinner first and then meet with the dignitary. So it's important to know which one you're going to. You'll go to your appropriate classroom for that and move ahead. So that's our speakers for the week. It's going to be a good time, I think, and I'm eager to see. We've got some audio coming in from one of the speakers out here. I'm going to go ahead and mute you if I can. All right. Okay. Next issue is voting. With voting, we've got 3 basically formal voting times. We've got our primary election. We have our runoffs, which, as you recall, as true in state politics, if multiple candidates are running for an office and no one candidate can secure a majority of the vote, so more than 50% of the vote in the first round of primaries, there's a runoff to determine between the top 2 vote getters from that pile of candidates who's going to be the one. And so the runoff thing will happen, with about a fifth or so of the races end up going to runoff based on our numbers. So there's basically a primary that's an extensive ballot just for the party. You're voting on who you want to send forward as basically the finalists to go up against the other party's finalists. The runoff election, which determines any sort of shakeout of who didn't make the majority in the first round. This will help determine who that finalist will now be. And then we have, of course, the general election at the very end of the week, where people are going to vote on who they want to win the certain office between the Nationalists and the Federalists, head-to-head for that one office. We do voting in a room with a bunch of laptops, and the precinct party chairmen are going to be in charge of helping keep an orderly operation in there, but it'll also be counselors staffed in there. It goes pretty quickly with the number of computers we have in, but there's going to be a line queuing up outside that will probably be fairly lengthy. It's your job as counselors to empower the precinct party chairman to keep order in the room. The room should be fairly quiet. Nobody should be explaining who they should vote for or asking questions. It should be a quiet space where people can cast their votes quickly with their roster number, and then they get out of there. And there's going to be a buffer zone of where campaigning has to stop, just like in real life. You can't campaign in people's faces when they're about to walk into the voting booth. There's a buffer out front of schools and so on where the voting takes place that people can't campaign. And so the campaign committee will be in full effect talking to people in line, but up until a certain point to the door of the room. And then in the ballot, the voting booth, we want it to be pretty quiet in there. Encourage your statesmen at the beginning of the week as they hear speeches to make notes in their manual, right? That list of offices is a good place for it. Take notes of the people they want to vote for so that they can quickly go through the ballot. If they have to sit there and try to remember who it was that they liked for county commissioner, they're probably going to forget. But if they write down in the moment, they've got a cheat sheet, and they can bring that cheat sheet in, of course, and use it to help them vote quicker. That's a pretty effective way. So give them that tip throughout the week. Important thing to remember here is that you are not going to require your city to vote. You can encourage them to vote, but we're not going to say, hey, we're all going to vote and then we're going to go do this. Don't. Tell them where the polls are. Tell them when the polls open and when they close, and let them do their thing. It's their responsibility to get there and to actually cast the votes for their fellow statesmen. The lesson that we learn from this is the cities that don't have 100% turnout, the ones that have like 85% turnout, those few guys that didn't cast their votes, often we'll see races that are decided by one vote. Or if they're a tie, we do a coin flip, as you're aware. And so that illustrates the point that even one or two votes staying home on voting day can sometimes sway an election. And those coin flip decisions actually do happen around the country. There's usually one or two of those kind of quirky stories that really happen in real life, often in small precincts where not everybody got out to vote. So the lesson we're trying to teach there is that every vote counts, and the way to really teach that is to learn by doing, which is to let the statesmen figure out if and when they're going to make time to go vote, and how they're going to face their peers if their friend lost by one vote. Okay, so don't tell them how to do it. Just tell them here's where the information is and go do it yourself. The college fair. We have an exciting college fair this year as always. We've got more than 45 institutions. And when I say institutions, I mean universities mostly, but also things like ROTC and various segments within universities. We've got universities from all over the state and also outside the state. We've got military academies present. We've got a lot of people wanting to talk to these students about their futures. The college fair is going to take place Friday morning. Parents will be there to pick up their kids, and so there'll be parents mingling about. It's going to be a busy, high-energy space. This is kind of during the rec time period Friday morning. 45 institutions, and the thing about the college fair is we're not trying to mandate that everyone needs to go to college from Boise State. But what we're trying to do is make a lot of opportunities available. Craig just texted me, we've got more than 50 institutions now that have already confirmed, so it keeps growing every day. What we need to remember too is that a lot of the students here have come from what I would call relatively privileged backgrounds. They go to large schools that have strong support, strong counseling. They've got they've been getting college recruiters talking to them for years. They've done their PSATs and their SATs, and they've got the whole thing lined up. It's a given that their parents are going to put them to college. They may or may not have financial issues dealing with it. And then you've got the full range of diversity of Boise State from all the socioeconomic points in the ladder. You've got students who don't think that they can afford to go to college, or that it's probably not for them, and it's not the right option. Respect the diversity that might be present, and don't think it's a given that this fair is for them or not for them. You'll have students who say, this is a waste of my time. I know everything I'm doing. I don't need to go talk about financial aid or go talk to this university. They do, and they can learn something from it. So encourage them to go swing by and talk to these people, these admissions counselors. And for those who think that it's not for them, encourage them to go. They might find out that some of these schools are within reach financially, or that they might have unique programs within those colleges that they hadn't thought of. So encourage them to attend. Of course, you're not requiring them to, but it's an opportunity they don't want to miss. A lot of these schools that students come from don't have the opportunity to get 50 schools in one place to talk to them. And we know from these recruiters, they're excited to talk to these students because they're all the best. So it's a great time for them as well. And the parents will be excited to learn this as well. So they can go with or without their statesmen through the college fair themselves. Moving on to the parade and the Capitol visit. The Capitol visit this year is going to be on Wednesday, and it's going to be taking place right after lunch. So we're going to be assembling at 1:45 and kicking off at 2 p.m. And we'll spend the afternoon at the Capitol grounds and then come back. So it's different this year. For those of you who remember that we've had parades sometimes early morning on a Friday, for instance, this year it is going to be midday on a Wednesday in the heat. Hopefully we'll get a break and some cool weather. The parade visit, the Capitol parade happens like this. We're going to assemble, we're going to line up, and we're going to kick off for the parade and march with the flags in front and the band behind them, and the rest of the cities in as neat a line as we can, probably 8 wide. So it's a big column of statesmen going down. We have police escorts. We have parade permits with the city that'll get us to the Capitol. So that is fairly easy to get through traffic, but we do not have a parade permit on the way back from the Capitol. So the important thing here is that we get there in a very orderly way. We don't have to worry about traffic lights or traffic because we have police escorts and we just push on through. But on the way back, we're coming back releasing by city. So we'll be assembling outside the Capitol and we'll say, Burkhead City, go meet out front of the Capitol, here, and the counselor will wave down their city. When they're all accounted for, they'll head back as a city and obey traffic regulations and crosswalks and the like. So as a counselor, you're in charge of making sure your city gets there safely, but especially in charge of making sure they get back safely by city. Leave behind any unnecessary items when you go to the Capitol. We are going to put every single body through security. So we'll probably assemble at the Capitol, have a program on the front steps, and then probably split up and go into several entrances of the Capitol to make sure we get through security quickly. The DPS is there to help us, but it's a slow process. We've got to go through security. So make sure that you encourage your statesmen to leave behind any excess things, take stuff out of their pocket. It's just going to slow things down. It's not a massive TSA operation. This is a kind of one or two trays at a time with watches and keys and so on. So so try to be slim when you get there. We're encouraging when they get there. Every counselor will have an assignment at the Capitol, so you'll be busy. You'll be assigned to some piece of the Capitol, or the extension, or the gift shop, or the cafeteria, or something. But make sure that the statesmen again are not lying around, sitting down. There are exhibits all throughout the Capitol. We've got Medal of Honor winners from Texas. They've got a whole exhibit for that, which I love reading. It takes up tons of time if you want to read that. They can go take great pictures. They can go visit the gift shop. They've got stuff to do, but more importantly, tell them to go look up their representative and drop by their office. Actually go visit their senator or the representative. If they're not there, and they may not be, their staff will, and they can walk in and greet their chief of staff and the various interns that are working there. Some of the representatives have kind of cute things that they give their constituents, like pins and koozies and whatnot. So it's an interesting time to actually meet your representatives or meet their staff and get to know them. So encourage that if you can. The House and Senate will be meeting on the House and Senate floor, and they'll probably be the only ones allowed, other than a few counselors, on the House and Senate floor in the chairs. The sergeant at arms, that's the term I'm thinking of, the sergeant at arms and the DPS, the security in the building, they have the ultimate say of the place. And so if they need us to stop doing something, we need to stop doing it. If they need us to stop swiveling in the chairs, put our feet down on something, sit upright, we've got to do it. They're pretty particular about the furnishings and the chairs and the general appearance and orderliness of the building. So if we have like a mountain of water bottles and backpacks and papers at the front steps of the entrance to the galleries, that's not going to cut it. So make sure that you're keeping things orderly. Don't let people kick up their feet or lounge and so on, especially in the chambers and the gallery settings. And the sergeant at arms will be on it and their staff. So the counselors need to be kind of helping keep decorum, especially in the chambers, but throughout the Capitol as well. We'll probably have other tours that are meeting there at the same time. Various student groups and tourists and so on will be there. We need to be mindful of their space as well. We're a pretty big force of people in the building. It's hard to miss us, but we need to kind of be mindful of other programs. But we do, own the rooms that we're in. So if people are trying to come in and disrupt our proceedings, it's our space for that time. But it's a glorious place to be in that building, and it's a great opportunity and a really special thing we get to do every year with the Capitol. All right, so moving on to kind of our last couple slides. We got 2 slides left, but these are kind of the heavier topics for the webinar. I want to make sure we kind of hammer these home. You're responsible for the liability and wellness of these statesmen throughout the week. It's a tremendous, if you can just imagine the tremendous, insurance risk and safety and security risk that we take on, and the American Legion takes on when we invite 1,100 plus minors onto a campus far away from home for many of them, and entrust them in the care of counselors who sometimes are 1 year older than them. That's a tremendous thought when you think about it. And so we have a responsibility to maintain their safety and security throughout the week. And there are some techniques to do this. So the uniform helps keep order. We know who's part of the program, and we can visually spot where people are at all times. You can find buddy systems to make sure that roommates or buddies in the city know where the other one is. So keep track of all the people. Enforce the physical boundaries of the campus and along in the dorm areas. So if there are buildings that are off limits, we need to enforce that. If there are certain streets, we need to enforce that. There's not a lot of wandering around time. We've kind of run that out of the program. So everyone's kind of with another group at all times during the week, but make sure that people aren't wandering off in the wrong direction. Another way we maintain safety throughout the week is we obey all the traffic rules. We respect signage. We respect the classes that are in session and all the other camps that might be taking place on the campus. We respect property. That includes, by the way, taking the free school newspaper out of the bins. We're not students there, so we don't pay the fees that support that. So we're not going to put all 1,100 of us and raid those newspapers. So the newspapers are off limits as well. The free one, that's campus newspaper. You should know that we have a doctor and a registered EMT on staff at all times. So we have medical staff available. We have access to a nearby hospital. And of course, we have 911 if we need it. The way we're going to run this is if there's a life-threatening emergency, of course, you call 911 first, and then you contact the medical staff, and you'll have those numbers at the beginning of the week. So you'll contact the doctor and the EMT immediately after you've called 911. If it's not a life-threatening emergency, you call the doctor. It's probably good to rope in the nearest, most senior counselor you can see within eyesight and get them involved as well, or text quickly. And we'll handle that from there. We've been fortunate not to have major injuries, but occasionally bones happen, broken bones and sprains and so on happen. So especially during athletics. So encourage safety in all that we're doing. Don't let people horse around. That leads to injury. We need to call the director or the chairman or one of the high-level kind of assistant directors of the program also in event of any emergency that requires doctor attention of an urgent nature. One of the things you can do to just encourage the well-being of your statesmen throughout in a day-to-day basis is encourage them to stay hydrated and to get some rest and to eat well. It seems silly, but a lot of the headaches people might get later in the week might come from, drinking too many energy drinks and not drinking enough water, or not sleeping well, or, you have a really poor diet, right? They might have intestinal issues because they've just been eating really poorly. So encourage people to do the things their parents taught them, right? Eat well, drink water, drink plenty of water, get some rest. So everyone's pretty tired, but if you hear people up at all hours, or they seem particularly energized and they want to hang out with their friends in the dorm, it's your responsibility to kind of break that up and let people get back to their to their rooms to get some sleep. You owe them that. Let's see. We try not to overrun our medical staff with the minor things of the week. So if somebody's complaining of a little bit of a headache, encourage them to drink water, but if they want to see a doctor, they have a right to, so you have no right to tell them no, and encourage them to see the doctor if they need it. But a lot of times the minor kind of grunts and groans can be resolved through, frankly, a lot of water and some rest. But reach out if you have any questions about this from a more senior counselor. Be sure to respect the privacy of statesmen regarding their personal and medical issues. So if somebody tells you in confidence they've got some issue and they need to see the doctor, try to keep that privately and not announce it to the city. Pretty common courtesy there, but also there could be some legal issues down the road. I don't even want to imagine what those might be, but just respect their privacy. Regarding people's mental health, so you should be aware that you're not, with the exception of, I guess, the couple on staff who are trained in this way, you're not authorized or qualified to really carry out serious mental health counseling, and that's not what we offer during the program. So if you see a statesman who might be exhibiting, symptoms of a panic attack, or they're agitated or anxious, realize that this could be nerves, like they're about to give a big speech. It could be that they feel, they're homesick and they're away from family for the first time. They've traveled out of the county for the first time in their life, or they've stayed over in a dorm or a hotel for the first time. You've got people out of their element. Part of that's by design, to get them to kind of break out of whatever stereotype they've been, cast into in their high school as the nerd or the jock or whatever, and to get them to come kind of level out and try it in a blank canvas and see if they can win governor or whatever it might be. So part of it's by design, to put them out of their element. But we don't want them to be uncomfortable and unhealthy. So if you see statesmen exhibiting some sort of kind of troublesome or severe signs, if their demeanor changes really quickly throughout the week, these are sorts of things you might want to take note of. The best recommendation is just strike up a conversation with the statesman discreetly, in a friendly manner, and just say, hey, you doing okay? How's the week going for you? And they might tell you. You can say, like, I've noticed you look kind of, agitated or nervous. Are you okay? And if you don't think you can handle it, then bring another counselor into the mix, more senior counselor. You can consult with the doctor and EMT staff and just put it on their radar that we've got a statesman that might be exhibiting some mental health concerns. But again, you're not qualified or authorized to really intervene and provide treatment or therapy, or report them to the doctor involuntarily or anything. That's not your role. So we're there to keep them safe, and we're there to keep them productive in the week. So if it becomes disruptive, we can pull them aside and have a conversation with them, and deal with it that way. If somebody's exhibiting violent behaviors or anything like that, we treat that as we do with any emergency, though. If you have questions about the mental health stuff, we'll talk about that, I guess, the week of the first day of the training as well, and kind of give you some updated information with that. You all do the Train Right training for working with minors. We're going to adhere to those policies strictly. That's part of the University of Texas at Austin's requirements to have us on their campus. So we're going to abide by those rules entirely. One of the best practices, of course, is never to be alone with a statesman in a space. So always kind of, always have a third party present. So another statesman, another counselor, just never be alone with the statesman. It's mostly just for appearances. And because if it comes down into a he said about what took place in a space when it was just one-on-one, that's where things get difficult legally, and can open yourself up to risk and open up the Legion to risk. And we just want to avoid that problem. So as the Train Right encourage, we're going to make sure that we're never one-on-one in any sort of setting with a minor. Another thing too is, of course, don't be undressed in front of statesmen. So if you have a communal bathroom situation, you need to get up and use the bathroom in the shower way earlier than them, or figure out a time to do that discreetly. Don't be undressed, right? Don't respect people's privacy and space. So knock before entering the room, that sort of thing. Announce yourself. And don't comment on other statesmen's bodies or your own. These are teenage boys, and they want to talk about, like, oh, what do you do for your workout plan? Here's what I do. Be really careful about how you're talking about and commenting on other people's bodies, or about your own body, or showing off your body. You just be careful with this. These are minors that you're responsible for, and you don't want anything to be misconstrued or to put anyone in an uncomfortable situation. All right. Lastly, general conduct. So you're expected to conduct yourself in a manner that makes the Legion proud, and that means year-round. So not just during the week, but also year-round. So we're not out to outright censor anyone or tell people what they can and can't say on social media, but we encourage you to be aware of what you're posting to social media. For instance, the public comments you make about politics or veterans, especially veterans issues. Just be mindful that people associate you with the American Legion and with the Boys State program. And we're a nonpartisan program that tries to encourage people to learn the process of politics and not necessarily to learn a political ideology. And we're there to, of course, respect and honor veterans who established the program. So just be mindful of the images you're portraying outwardly and keep it respectful and coherent on social media. If you're listing Texas Boys State as on your resume or LinkedIn profile, which we encourage you to, it's actually opened up doors for me. I've actually gotten job interviews and had good job interviews that led to offers, frankly, because of some of the anecdotes I used about leadership at Boys State that I've learned. So if you're using that professionally, we encourage you to just be mindful that when you do that, you're representing the Legion, representing Boys State. So carry yourself appropriately. Throughout the week, we're going to encourage good conduct among the statesmen. So no bullying, no intimidation, no harassment. We're not going to tolerate any sort of slurs related to race, national origin, sexual orientation, you name it. So we need to be mindful we're not tolerating slurs and insults and profanity throughout the week. So you intervene in those moments. And the reason is it portrays the Legion in a poor light. It lowers the standard of civil discourse. And it makes the program look like it's not accomplishing what it's setting out to do, which is to elevate these young men into positions of prominence in the community where they can run for office, where they can lead by example, where they can honor their community with their service. And the way we do that is not through intimidation and bullying. Politics aside, this is not the lesson we're teaching at Boys State. And so it's going to be your responsibility to intervene when you hear that. If you hear someone being bullied or teased or otherwise excluded based on a characteristic of their identity, it's your job to intervene in that situation immediately and pull the student aside to make sure they're okay, and intervene and pull the students aside that are doing it and have a discussion with them that we don't tolerate that in the program. Repeated bad behavior, of course, we can report up the chain and we can dismiss them from the program and notify their sponsors that they didn't complete the program because of their bad behavior. This happens rarely. I can't even imagine it's happened in the last couple of years even. We've had a pretty well-behaved group, and I think that's due to the leadership that we see in our counseling staff in recent years. So keep up the good work. Lastly, if you see, you're going to get a lot of questions throughout the week. They're going to see that you're one of the people of authority. You've got the different shirt on. You seem to be in charge. Random observers on campus, parents early in the week and then at the end of the week. A lot of people are going to walk up and say, what is this program? Or what are you guys about? You should embrace those questions and enthusiastically and cheerfully answer them and give them a general overview about the program. It's a week-long learn by doing leadership camp, and we've got the best in the state and all that kind of stuff. But if somebody seems to be drilling for dirt or seems to be trying to do a gotcha interview piece, or if they make it clear that they're a member of the media, and that means a blog, a newspaper on campus, or big-time national news, everything in between. If you sense that there's something deeper there, or it's a media organization, say, hey, I'm happy to answer your questions, but I'm not really a spokesperson for the program. So the better person to talk to would be our media contact, which is Darren Bravo. That's me. So there's my lovely photo, I think 10 years ago now. So I'm that guy that uses the 10-year-old bio photo. So contact me and I'll give you my cell phone number early in the week and email address, and you can share that with people who need to know. And I'm more than happy to talk to people at length about anything they have questions about throughout the week. So that is especially news stories. We want to make sure that journalists get a comprehensive look at our week and that they're able to get the full story and not just swoop in for like a 5-minute gotcha piece and get the one moment when people are slouching or are not really at their best in the room, and kind of report that as the story. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is make sure that we answer the questions appropriately for media. And lastly, very excited to say that we have, for the first time ever, a professional documentary team that will be following us around throughout the week. I believe we're going to have about 10 or 11 people from this team. This is from Mylan Productions. So we have some, professional documentarians who have produced high quality films that have been picked up on places that that you've seen before. And they have joined in the program to document what goes on before, during, and after the program, to try to tell a story about what we're doing as a camp, to try to teach civil discourse in an era where sometimes that's lacking. So we've got extra eyes on us this week, and we want to make sure that we're at our very best, as we always are, but there's always the chance that we're being watched and covered by cameras. That's actually confirmed now that we've got, the press corps is out there constantly shooting film, but now it's really confirmed because we have a documentary team that's out to try to get compelling stories from the week, and they're out to do a fair job, and we trust they're going to do a great job. Amanda and Jesse are leading that team. We'll introduce them in the week, but they've actually selected half dozen or a dozen statesmen who they followed them all the way up from being selected in their various hometowns all throughout the state. And they're even, I think, filming them like packing and getting ready for Boise State, and they'll follow them throughout the week. So they're trying to get a full picture of the week and all the activities. So you're going to see a lot of bodies running around capturing things. They're going to try to fade into the background and pretend that they're not there. Don't talk directly to the camera unless they're asking you questions to the side. So let them do their thing and run around as a professional crew that they know how to be. But if they want to interview you, step aside and interview with them. We'll introduce them and explain more about that in the beginning of the week. But we know that they're going to capture some profile pieces of some statesmen that are going to be really compelling, because that's what we do every year is we shape lives. And they come out of the program better than they were when they came in. And they're there to tell that story and show what we do and paint it in a fair light. So we got a lot of people watching. But I think that's exciting because I think the more people watch, the more they're impressed with what we're doing. Impressed not only with the complex logistical feats that we accomplish every year, but also with the quality of students we're cranking out of this program, and the quality of students we bring in every year, and the quality of speakers we have, and the quality of the facilities and so on. So it's going to be a great year, and I'm excited to see where we go, and it'll be the best Boise State ever. I haven't seen any questions come up on the question pane. We have plenty of time when the week gets started to ask questions, of course. So if you don't think of one in the next minute, I will see you the week of Boise State. We'll have staff orientation on Saturday, so make sure you're checked in time for that. We'll begin our orientation, spend quite a bit of time on Saturday, and then we'll have orientation Sunday morning, face-to-face, and then Sunday afternoon we start checking in the statesmen, and then it's all hands on deck for the full week. So looking forward to meeting all of you, especially the new ones, and seeing old friends as always. Welcome to the staff, and I will see you soon. If you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. You've probably seen my email. It's darren.brabham@gmail.com, or I'll see you the week of. And watch for the email to go out from Awesome in a day or two. It'll have the link to the recorded version of this, and also the quiz that you need to take before you get there. But that concludes this third and final webinar of the series, looking at logistics and liability and wellness and media relations. And I think you're all set to make this the best Boise State ever. Thanks for joining. Bye, guys.